This module is a case study on a particular drug called Humira. Humira is put out by a company named AbbVie, and it is their primary product right now. They make lots of money selling this drug, but if this drug were to fall victim to some sort of generic competition, it would be a big problem for the company. Humira is interesting from my perspective because it's a great case study to show you a patent portfolio at work. Humira is protected by not one or two or three or a couple patents, but by a huge stack of patents. Patents that differ in interesting ways, that overlap in interesting ways. And it's a great example to show you those patents and show you how a company builds a portfolio and show you how a company talks about a patent portfolio as well. As I say, the key reason I focus on Humira is because there's a big stack of patents. And as we look at the stack of patents, I want to start asking the key questions. For instance, because there are so many patents, does that allow the portfolio to age more gracefully? Does it allow one patent to expire and another to take its place, thus giving us a longer term of protection? Similarly, because there are so many patents, is the net protection stronger? Does it mean that one patent covers us to one degree, but a different patent comes in, covers us in a different language, a different angle, against a different potential competitor? Moreover, as we look at a big pile of patents, I also want to begin to pay attention to what I think of as the family tree. Patents are often related to one another, such that I filed a first patent. I then came back and said, hey, patent office, that initial document I filed with you, I want to build a second patent on top of that one. So I filed in year 1 and got a first patent. Now I come back in year 2 or year 3 and I say, you know what? I want a second patent based on my same original document. It's called a continuation application. But what it does is it gives us kind of a family tree of patents, where an original application might lead to several patents, which might lead to several other applications, and they all might be related in the sense they all tie back to the very first disclosure. And again, you'll see that as we look at the Humira patents. Let me start by showing you a quick video so you can see what Humira is all about.
Hello and welcome to VideoScript presented by Drugs.com. Today in the first of 3 presentations, we are reviewing Humira, a medication in the class of drugs known as tumor necrosis factor or TNF blockers. Humira, known by the generic name of adalimumab, is approved by the FDA for treatment of adults with moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis and for use in moderate to severe Crohn's disease in patients who have not had success with other therapies. Humira is also approved for treatment of other immune-mediated conditions, including plaque psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, juvenile idiopathic arthritis, and ankylosing spondylitis. Normally, the immune system can defend the body from harmful effects. Inflammation is a normal process used by the body for repair of injury or illness. However, in an autoimmune disease, healthy tissues are attacked by the body. Rheumatoid arthritis and Crohn's disease are considered autoimmune diseases. TNF is a protein normally found in the body that promotes the normal defense mechanism of inflammation. However, in rheumatoid arthritis and Crohn's disease, TNF levels are too high, and this leads to the inflammation, pain, and fever that is commonly seen in these diseases. Additionally, in rheumatoid arthritis, there is tenderness and swelling of the joints, and in Crohn's disease, there is abdominal pain and diarrhea. Humira is a synthetic antibody and works by binding and blocking this TNF protein. By blocking this protein, Humira helps to keep the protein from attacking healthy cells and reduces the inflammation, pain, and other destructive effects seen on the joints and in the intestine. Although Humira is an injection that is given under the skin, most patients or their caregivers can be taught to give the injection at home, so it can be more convenient for the patient. Doses are variable and are based upon the needs of the patient, but injections are usually only given once every other week. Humira is supplied in a single-use, pre-filled glass syringe which makes it easier for the patient to give their own doses.
With that background, let's take a look at the first patent. This patent is the 382 patent. It was issued in the year 2000. And as you can see from the title over here, it's a patent on human antibodies that bind human TNF-alpha. What does all that mean? This is the patent on what we would call the composition of matter. This is the patent on the antibody itself. So a long time ago, folks figured out that this antibody was interesting, maybe interesting for a bunch of different things like RA and Crohn's, who knows. They figured out it was interesting. They went ahead and patented the antibody itself. So this patent is a patent in the isolated human antibody that we would today call Humira. And so this patent was a really strong and important patent because it protected the drug. Not how to make it, not how to use it. It protected the drug. Going to go down a little bit in the patent document. You could see it was filed in 1996. We get about 20 years from filing, give or take. There's some adjustments now and then, but about 20 years. So that means the company has all the way until 2016 where this patent is going to protect them from anyone coming after this drug. And I can show you at the back of the patent here, there's the claim, right? It's a claim for an isolated human antibody, right? This is what the drug is. It's an isolated human antibody. Here's our claim for it. It's this antibody. And then they use some words to describe exactly what it is. It's an antigen binding antibody that dissociates from human TNF-alpha. Some of you know what this means. Some of you won't. It doesn't really matter for our purposes. Let me represent to you that this claim is for the drug substance. And all these words just define exactly what the drug substance is. It's derived from a human antibody. It's in a special class of drugs. This wasn't just mixed up in the lab. This is derived from a human antibody, but they articulate in a way that if you want to make the drug, you'd have to violate this patent. Boom, we're locked up for until 2016. But of course, that's not long enough. So what we saw the company do is they came out starting in 2013, 2014, 2015, and they started to get some patents on the methods of using the drug, right? On the idea that not only do you want the drug to exist, but you actually want to take it, and you want to take it in certain dosage regimens. Want to take this much this week, that much the next week, and then we'll help you with these various ailments that you heard about in the video, right? Take this much for rheumatoid arthritis, take this much for Crohn's disease, and so on. Here's one of the many patents on dosing, right? The patents on how much to take and for what ailments. You can see there's the patent number up in the top. It's the 135 patent, issued, as I said, in 2014 for this one. Title is Methods of Administering the anti-TNF-alpha antibody, right? Again, that's what this patent's going to be about. It's about dosing regimes for a particular ailment. Information about filing, I'm highlighting a few things. So this one was filed in my middle box in 2002. That would give us roughly the sense we get 20 years. This will take us to 2022. The bottom box says there was a provisional application, which is to say they filed the application actually in 2001, but they filed one of those provisionals, one of the ones that said, hey, we'll come back within 12 months and finish it up. We're just marking, putting kind of a bookmark. We're planting our flag in 2001, but we'll be back. And again, they did come back. June 5th, 2002, they finished the application. They get 20 years. Again, takes us to 2022. Then my top box notes, this one got extended by a couple years if the patent office is slow to grant the patent, but they ultimately do. Sometimes you qualify for extra years to be added on to your patent. So again, this is one of the dosing patents. We can see it's going to give them protection beyond 2016, right? That's the key move. The composition of matter goes away in 2016, but now this patent and some others like it will go far beyond that. Here's the claim at the back of the patent that I just showed you. The claim is for a method of treating rheumatoid arthritis. And just pause there. Right, different from the patent we looked at a moment ago. The one we looked at a moment ago was the composition of matter. It was the thing. It was the antibody, the isolated human antibody, meaning whatever that vocabulary meant. This one is a method for treating rheumatoid arthritis. So it's our method for making you feel better if you have RA. And so we get a method for treating rheumatoid arthritis in a human subject comprising administering subcutaneously, so we're going to give you a needle under the skin subcutaneously, to a human subject having RA, a total body dose of 40 milligrams of, guess what, of the antibody we looked at in the last patent. Human anti-TNF-A alpha antibody once every 13 to 15 days for a period of time sufficient to treat the rheumatoid arthritis, when the antibody comprises, and they articulate it in a little bit of a different manner, but it is the same antibody from the previous patent. So this time we get a patent and a method for treating the disease in a human subject, where you're doing a dose once every 2 weeks, give or take, 40 milligrams once every 13 to 15 days. Now, the company, as I say, did a bunch of patents like this. Here's another one, the 737, comes out in 2014. Also, it's another method of administering that same antibody. Scroll down a little bit just to show you the dates of filing. This one comes in. You could see in the middle of my big box. Well, let's start at the top, actually. At the top of my big box here, I'll mark it on the screen also. This one's filed in April 2014. But then there's more information. It says it's division of an earlier application that was filed in 2002 and is the patent we just looked at, it turns out. What does this mean? Remember I mentioned about families? Sometimes I'll file an application in the first year. I'll then get a patent issue. I'll then come back and say, hey, I want to do more off that same application. Well, that's where this one came from. There was the original application, right, the one that was filed in 2002. It led to the patent we just looked at. Then they came back in 2014 and said, you know what, in that original application, there's actually more good stuff. So we want to follow up. We want to do a division or a continuation, just patent language for another patent built on the same original application. And the reason I do that, let's just be clear, is because this way I get credit for having filed way back in 2002, right? Just in case something happened between 2002 and 2014 that would render obvious my claimed invention, I'm saying, look, count it as if I filed way back in 2002. The only prior art that matters is the stuff before 2002. The downside to acknowledging that you're part of a family is the patent's going to expire as if it was filed in 2002. So even though this one didn't come up until 2014, its clock started in 2002. So this one's going to expire roughly in 2022 also. But again, it's another patent in a dosing regime. Now, I want to go ahead and take a look inside the patent office for a moment, and I want to show you some of the details about how they got these dosing patents. And the reason I want to do that is, first, note how important they're going to be, right? If the patent on the drug expires in 2016, these dosing patents become really important pretty soon. And there's several of them. I showed you two. There's actually a whole bunch. I'll give you the list in a moment. But I want to go and look at the patent office, and I want to show you the fight to get these patents and where the patent office was skeptical and what AbbVie said back. I want to use that both to show you this process, because many of you will be involved in this process. You'll be involved in applying for a patent and going through this back and forth with the patent office. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. I'm going to show you the documents, and then I want to use that to continue the story of AbbVie and Humira. So first, here's some screen captures. Let me walk you through on the patent office website to show you some of the background documents on that first dosing patent we just looked at. So this is the website that the patent office runs, where you can look up information about patents that have issued. Here's where you can go to see the original application as it was filed. Here's where you can go to see the back and forth documents between the patent office and the applicant. And what I want to show you is I want to show you those documents for one of the patents we just looked at. This is the patent about rheumatoid arthritis. So I'm on the website there. I typed in the patent number. I'm going to click that radial, and away we go. And what we're going to see is the computer is now going to pull up for us all the data the patent office has about that issued patent. You can see here I'm on the tab Application Data. And if you just take a look at the screen, I'm running my mouse over the screen so you can see it, we get some basic information, the application number, when it was filed, the names, there's the first named inventor, for example, and so on. Over here is the patent number. I'll highlight that. That's the patent we were interested in. There's a ton of information we'll look at different points, but what I want to look at right now is this image file wrapper. What that is it's scanned versions of all the documents that went back and forth between, in this case, AbbVie, the company behind Humira, and the Patent Office. And I'm just going to scroll down so you can get a sense. You can see here's the dates. June 16th is the last entry in the file, June 16, 2015. But as you scroll down, this is a pretty big file. There was a lot of information that went back and forth as the company tried to get this patent, and the Patent Office resisted, asked questions, pushed back a little bit, and so on. And look at all this, all these years of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And if we were trying to really figure this out, we'd go line by line. Look at all these documents. It starts all the way back in 2002. I don't want to do that with you, but I do want to show you some of the documents. And I kind of want to do that in 2 steps. First, while we're in a video kind of mode showing you the screen interactively, let me just scroll up. So we started in 2002. And as you move up, again, all this is clickable. All this is things we can look at. But what I want to show you, and I'll pause when I get to the interesting moments, what I want to show you is some of the back and forth. So here, for instance, back in 2007, I'll highlight that to make sure you can see it. In 2007, the Patent Office gave a final rejection. Now, I know it doesn't look very final, does it? There's a lot of this language in these documents, final versus non-final, and so on. The reality is, when the Patent Office says no to an application, what you can do is you can always pay a little more and ask them to take another look. When the Patent Office is saying final, what they're really meaning is you've used up your budget. You paid a certain amount of money to get your application looked at, and it's taken enough time, we've done enough rounds, you're done. You have to pay again if you want us to look further. And as you scroll by, you'll notice there are a lot of these final and non-final rejections in this history, and there are also these requests for continued examination, where, hey, I'll pay more money, go ahead, let me see more. And you can see the applicant kept giving non-patent literature, so they kept giving science articles to try to make their case, show why this is actually innovative and new and the like. There is, I'm highlighting here, the examiner interview summary record. A whole bunch of times they got together with the patent examiner, maybe by phone, maybe in person, to talk things through. A whole bunch of times you get documents like this, the applicant arguments and remarks made in an amendment, where in this case AbbVie would say, you know what, fine, we'll make the following change, we'll make the following adjustment based on what you've said. Here are affidavits being submitted, got a whole bunch of them there in July 2008, it looks like. This is when something came up. There was a disagreement about what a source means. There was a disagreement about the date something happened. And so AbbVie would put in, here's sworn testimony from someone. Here's an expert in the field telling you how to interpret this document. Here's our inventor telling you when they actually did a key step. And on and on. Just get a sense there's another non-final rejection in 2008. On and on, another interview between the examiner and AbbVie. And we keep going with document after document after document. And again, we'd look at this, we'd go through all of this if this patent were important to our business, important to what we wanted to do. There's another rejection in 2011, again called final, even though we know that they ultimately get this patent. And all the way up. So again, lots of information. What I'm going to do in the next slides is slow down and show you one of these documents so you can see the pieces. But here I just wanted you to see the long list and that it is all publicly available. You can literally click on the box, hit the PDF button, and the government will download to your machine the PDF. And again, other things here too, which we won't look at right now, but there are other information about the application, information about other patents it might be related to, which we will look at in due course. This is one document from that file history we just saw. It's enormous, as you recall, but I just grabbed one of the documents so you can see what it looks like. You can see at the top, this is labeled Office Action Summary. What that means is that every time the Patent Office responds to an applicant, they put one of these cover sheets on top, and it summarizes the office action, right? The decision that we've just made based on whatever's before us now. This office action, if you look now at the bottom, it gives you an update. These are the claims pending. So there are a bunch of claims up to the number 122 that have been alive at this moment in the process. And if you note there under number 7 at the bottom, the claims are basically all rejected in this office action. So this is an office action. It's a non-final office action that is rejecting everything that was pending at the time. Here's one paragraph, a hard to read paragraph. I'll show you some more stuff in a moment. But here's a paragraph that the Patent Office wrote back to the applicant. It said, look, claims 1, 4 through 10, 16 through 21, and so on, they're rejected under 35 U.S.C. 103. If you remember, that's the obviousness section. So it's rejected because this is pretty obvious as being unpatentable over, and now they cite a bunch of literature and patents and the like. So here's this Vandeput article from the Arthritis and Rheumatoid periodical, whatever that is, in view of Rao from a different periodical. Here's it was translated and so on. So people say, look, we've got all this prior art, all these articles, all these prior data work that was done, and we think in light of all that, what you did is obvious. And remember, it's a big challenge for these dosing patents because the drug itself obviously had been around for a while, right? The patent on the drug itself expires in 2016. So if you want to come in and claim to have something novel about using the drug, right away people are going to look at you with a little skepticism. Because the drug's been out there, we know the drug is good for a bunch of stuff, and now you're coming in and claiming that your achievement was deciding it's 40 milligrams every other week instead of 20, or instead of 40 milligrams every single week, and so on. You're coming in with a detail of the dosing regimen, but you can imagine that's going to be met with some degree of concern, because we might think that once the drug exists, and once other folks have realized the drug is useful, in this case for rheumatoid arthritis, that fine-tuning exactly how much to take, while maybe hard and maybe costly, and you got to do phase 3 trials, and you risk making people ill and so on, maybe difficult, maybe costly, maybe time-consuming, but is it inventive? Or is it obvious that someone skilled in the art would naturally experiment with different dosing regimes? So here the Patent Office said, based on what we've seen, we think it's obvious. Here's deeper in the same document, because they do write it in English. They do kind of explain themselves so that you can understand what it is they're worried about. So it says, Vandeput teaches 283 RA patients participated in a dose-finding phase 2 study. It was double-blind, there was a placebo of the relevant antibody. The patients self-administered on a weekly basis, either the placebo or 20, 40, or 80 milligrams of the antibody by subcutaneous injection. So Vandeput's looking pretty close already, right, in that we have the pattern. It was tested, 40 milligrams is in there, and they tested on a weekly basis instead of an every other week basis, but still we're getting close. Vandeput further teaches that for all efficacy parameters studied, so the things that he tested, each of the doses were of nearly equal efficacy. So if you take 20, 40, or 80, you're basically okay. You weren't getting any extra bang for the buck. Vandeput differs from the claimed invention and does not explicitly teach that the antibody should be done biweekly. However, practicing the treatment on a biweekly basis would have been an obvious variation. So here the Patent Office puts forward one piece of prior art. Vandeput explains what the Patent Office thinks it said and comes back and says why it renders it obvious. And again, huge file here. You can imagine now AbbVie comes back and says, no, here's our expert filling out a declaration saying that if he had read Vandeput, he still wouldn't have expected that this would work. Here's why, right? You're going to have a war of experts on all these details. Here's more from the Patent Office. Again, just want to give you the flavor of what the documents sound like and look like. It would have been obvious to one of ordinary skill in the art, and one of ordinary skill in the art would have been motivated to modify the dosing regimen of Vandeput from weekly to biweekly given, and here's why. So they're really going to lay out, look, someone would have done this. Someone skilled in the art would have played with what turns out to be your claimed invention. Why? Well, one, administration of the antibody in a unit dose form, that is 40 milligrams, regardless of patient weight, is far preferred to a weight-based dose regime, because it allows a patient to administer the antibody at home rather than requiring a visit to a medical professional to get a precise weight and then deliver the exact amount required. Right? So one thing here was in the patent, it talks about 40 milligrams every other week. And as you'll see in some later documents, that's one of the big things the company really always emphasizes. How shocking is it that the same dose works for everybody? It's not weight dependent. Way more, way less, we give you the same thing. And the patent office at this stage rolled its eyes at that and said, oh, come on, of course you would have done that. Doing it weight-based makes it really hard for the patient. They have to know their weight, they have to adjust the dose. So obviously we would have given a shot at, can we just get away with the same dose for everyone? That's the patent office's first concern. Second concern down here, they say, look, this would have been obvious going from weekly to biweekly, given that administering 40 milligrams on a biweekly basis rather than administering 20 milligrams weekly is preferred, because the patient apprehended pain and real pain associated with the injection can be diminished by decreasing the number of injections. So again, patent office says, look, I get it. You think it was clever to go every other week, but of course someone skilled in the art would try that too, because I want to decrease the number of injections. So if it's equally effective to give you 40 every other week as it is 20 every single week, we would have tried that. For the two reasons given above, we're going to say this is obvious in light of what we knew. Again, remember, the patent office ultimately does issue the patent, just showing you some of the back and forth and some of the arguments. Another interesting source of information on these dosing patents, again, we looked at two. We looked at the details of the US Patent Office. Here's a document from 2014 in Europe. It turns out in 2014-2015, in Europe, there were questions raised on a lookalike patent, another dosing patent about RA, where a bunch of would-be competitors, people who wanted to make what's called a biosimilar. You could think of it as a generic drug, but we call it a biosimilar in this context because this drug was derived from a human antibody. Generic drug is a generic based on something that was made in a lab. When I'm doing kind of a lookalike drug based on something that used to be a human-derived compound of some sort, then we call it a biosimilar. It's different regulations at the FDA, different legal rules a little bit, but for our purposes, it's basically a generic. And so a bunch of folks wanted to make a biosimilar, wanted to make a generic of this human antibody-derived medicine, and they went to Europe and they fought about the patent there. And I pull this just so you can see, again, arguments in Europe look a lot like the arguments in the US. This is a document from AbbVie writing to the European Patent Office, trying to defend their patent. I like their introductory remarks. It's a good move for any patent holder when you've got a life-saving drug. You say something like this. By way of orientation, just to get us started, this patent protects the actual primary marketing authorization for the antibody drug, I don't even say that very well, adalimumab, the woman in the video did much better than I did, which is sold under the registered trademark Humira and is currently the biggest selling drug in the world. Right, and that's important. It's relevant. Right, this patent protects this drug, and the drug is huge. It's a really important drug to a lot of important ailments. It's the biggest selling drug in the world. Now remember, this is a little bit just framing, because the patent we're about to fight about isn't a patent for the drug. If you wanted that, we gave it to you. It's the one that expired in 2016. So we all agree that coming up with a way to make a drug based on this human antibody, awesome. You got patents all over the world for that. It's just that they expire in 2016. The current fight then is about these dosing patents. But again, I like the letter start, just reminding everyone the stakes are high. This is a big deal. We're not some patent troll coming in with a garbage patent. We're actually fighting about something really important, and we change lives and we make a lot of money. This is inside the letter. Again, you could see AbbVie fighting back in Europe. They say, as shown by expert and experimental evidence filed with this response, it was not obvious that the drug could be administered subcutaneously in a dosage of 40 milligram every 2 weeks with such therapeutic effect in rheumatoid arthritis. Indeed, it was to be expected that more drug would have to be administered and or more frequent administrations made. So they're going to try to defend that this was actually surprising to go every other week with just 40 milligrams. Here's more later on in their document. They ultimately want to focus on what they think is the closest prior art, and then they'll try to distinguish it. And they say in the present case, for reasons noted below, the closest prior art document is one of the documents describing the results from this DE007 trial. The documents describing the actual data of the trial are more relevant than any review article or commentary that discusses them. So they want to focus everyone on this trial. What do they say about it? They say it's the only prior trial in which RA patients received a flat dose, 20, 40, or 80, but it wasn't weight dependent, right? And this is one of their big themes, as we know. They're going to say, look, what's shocking here is that it's not weight dependent. Whatever you weigh, you get the same drug. And they say there's really only one trial that did that, DE07. So it's the only one we have to worry about, and it's subcutaneous also. They say the administration there was weekly, and so this is the one they're going to fight with. They're going to say it is a big step forward to go from this one, flat dose, subcutaneous every week, to their move, exactly 40 as your flat dose every other week. But they're trying to brush aside a lot of other evidence, right? In all other prior trials, the dosage was weight adjusted, not flat dose, making the disclosure more remote from the present invention. So they're setting up the argument that weight-based is a really key part of what they achieved. Now, while all that's going on, fighting in Europe, fighting in the US, patents getting issued in the US, while everyone's paying attention to all those dosage patents, this document hits the wires. So let me just set the stage a touch more, and then I'll show you this one. So the dosage patents are getting a lot of attention, and there's a lot of them. I'll catch you up in the numbers in a couple slides, but when it became clear that the drug itself was going off patent in 2016, AbbVie piles on these dosage patents. Here's the dose for rheumatoid arthritis. Here's the dose for Crohn's, and so on. They fight in the patent office. They do get resistance. We saw that file. They fight in Europe. They get it issued. They get resistance. And everyone is focused on the dosing patents. Then all of a sudden, Amgen shows up and files this thing. It is against this patent, the 8916157, which is not a patent about dosing, and it's a petition for inter partes review. What's all that mean? Well, inter partes review, you might recall, is this thing you can file at the patent office. You can go to the patent office and say, guys, you let this patent issue, but you shouldn't have. I understand why you did. It was just the patent applicant and you talking, right? It was ex parte, just the applicant and you. So you didn't have a motivated, well-funded, knowledgeable person like me in the room saying, don't do it, here's why. Now I'm here. Here I am, here's my petition. I am Amgen, I'm another company in this space. Amgen wants to make a biosimilar, right? Wants to enter with basically a generic version of Humira. They're knowledgeable, and they file with the patent office to request that the patent office grab this 157 patent, pull it back, look at it again with Amgen in the room. Because Amgen wants to argue that it's no good. Inter partes review. Bring that patent back. And again, what's interesting here is this isn't a dosing patent. This isn't something else. What's it on? There's the first claim in the 157 patent. It says a stable, liquid, aqueous, pharmaceutical formulation comprising A, the human antibody you know and love by this point, plus B, a tonicity agent, C, a surfactant, and D, a buffer system to maintain pH. This is a patent in a formulation. It's not the original composition of matter, so it's not the original drug. But it turns out AbbVie had some patents on things you could do where you take the original drug and you make it in a liquid form and you keep it so it's pH balanced and so it can survive on the shelves for a while and it's effective and it's concentrated enough that you can do it subcutaneously instead of intravenously, right? If it doesn't have enough bang, you might have to do it intravenously, get it directly into the bloodstream. Whereas if you can get enough concentration in the liquid dose, I can do it subcutaneously. And it turns out they have patents on these formulations. So they're saying, look, it might be we no longer own the original drug, but we made an innovative improvement to it. We made a liquid concentrated form that lasts on the shelves. And then 157 is one of those patents. Turns out there are others, and Amgen goes after it, maybe signaling that this too is important. Amgen wants to be able to make a stable liquid aqueous form made this way, potentially. And so, boom, they're coming in and challenging this in the IPR process. The big question in all this mess on everyone's mind is, when will the patents be vulnerable? Right? When is it that someone like Amgen or some other company can make a biosimilar? Is it in 2016 when the original patent dies? Will the dosing patents keep everyone out until 2022, 2023, 2024, whenever they expire? Is this formulation patent important? Will that keep people out until it expires? Big question is, when can the biosimilars enter? And as I mentioned early on in the video, huge question for AbbVie, right? This is the biggest selling drug in the world, and it's also their only product, more or less. And so when the patents give, all of a sudden the company is in really bad shape unless they've got their follow-on drug up and running. So everyone wants to understand, when can there be entry? So the company does a meeting for its investors, And among other things, they put up this slide, a slide that says we have a broad U.S. Humira patent estate. And check out the rows. The first row is the composition of matter. That's the patent we looked at right at the start. Expires at the end of 2016, but that one's great, right? That one protects the drug. No one's coming in till the end of 2016. That patent keeps everybody out. The next row, indication/method of treatment. These are the dosing patents, and they list the different ailments along the top here, right? There's rheumatoid arthritis, gastroindications, psoriasis, and so on. These different ailments, these are all FDA-approved ailments, which is to say you can use Humira to treat these illnesses. And they say, look, we got all these patents, right? 4 patents on rheumatoid arthritis, 6 on GI, 3, 4, 3, 1, 1, and the earliest expirations are these late years, right? We'll be alone for these various indications in these various years. So they list out these patents based on which ailment you have. But wait, there's more. We have these formulation patents, right? We have these patents, 14 of them expire 2022 to 2028, that are different formulations. And indeed, we just looked at one. The one that Amgen's going after must be one of those in those 14, right? It's the liquid formulation. Liquid, stable, lasts on the shelves. They say we have manufacturing patents, 24 of them. They don't expire till well after, right? 2027 to 2034, ways of making our drug, ways of making, I suppose, that liquid aqueous solution, and so on. And then other devices, diagnostics, right? In here, for example, they have some patents on the actual syringe you use to get the drug into your body. They made some tweaks to make it particularly easy to use, so great. They got a patent on that. So they list here the patents. Interestingly, they don't give the patent numbers. A real show of strength would be show me the numbers so that experts outside the company can look at those patents and see if they really believe in them. But the company didn't do that, but they give this slide to say, hey, we're strong, don't worry about us. Lots and lots of patents will stop entry. They then have this follow-on slide focusing on the dosing patents, the method of treatment patents, they call them. Right, and they say, look, biosimilar companies, and again, biosimilar is just a word that means generic. The only reason we have different vocabulary here is that we're dealing with a human antibody. But biosimilar companies must have the same route of administration, same dosage form and strength as the innovator. Which is to say, if I want to go to the FDA and say, I'd like approval on a look-alike drug, please. I don't want to make it a new drug. I don't want to do all the testing and paperwork of a new drug. I want to come forward and say, FDA, you already approved Humira. I would like to kind of free ride and say I have an identical drug, so approve me too. And I'd like pharmacists and doctors to be told that my drug is equivalent for all important purposes to the main drug. So if you're used to saying use Humira, you can now use my biosimilar. And your AbbVie says, look, if you want to be a biosimilar company, if you want to do that and be treated as the same and get the FDA advantages, you're going to have to do the same route of administration, the same dosage. You got to be just like us. If we say 40 milligrams every other week, you got to say it too. They go on that AbbVie has patent protection covering all of the approved indications. We saw that in a previous slide, and we'll see it here again in a minute. And these patents reflect the development work of more than 100 clinical trials. Right, which is to say, to get a dosing regime, you've got to do clinical trials. Got to give it to patients, see how they do, give it to more patients, see how they do. And they say that the treatment regimens differ across therapeutic areas. Here's the chart below, right, where we have the list of indications. So the different things that could be wrong. There's RA, right? There's psoriasis. Here's the label. So the FDA approves very specific labels. So if you sell Humira, you're allowed to say that it's good for RA, and you have to take 40 milligrams every other week. You're allowed to also say it's good for psoriasis. You have to take 80 milligrams or 40 milligrams every other week. And again, there's more detail on the label. Point is, AbbVie wants to say these patents are really important. And you think about why, it becomes clear. Right, there's this big list of patents, manufacturing patents, formulations, but it might be a biosimilar entrant doesn't need those things. Might be the entrant can manufacture his own way. Might be they can make their own liquid form that's a little bit different. But what AbbVie wants to focus everyone on is, hey guys, if they make a biosimilar, they're going to want their label to say that it is good for RA. They're going to want their label to say it is good for psoriasis. And if their label says that, they're going to have to give this instruction of how much, 40 milligrams every other week. And if they do that, they're walking right into our dosage patents. right? Their label will fall within the scope of our dosage patents, because our dosage patents cover the situation where someone tells someone else to do it this way. So the dosage patents are special because we know the biosimilar entrant will trigger liability under those patents. They might also trigger it under other patents, maybe, who knows, but we know for sure they're going to use these. And so on the one hand, AbbVie wants to show you all the patents and say we have patents in our manufacturing method, in our media, where we use to grow the cells, whatever it is. We got a lot of patents. We hope that works. But we know for sure these dosing patents are in the game because a biosimilar will want their label to say this. So what do we make of this? This looks like a good, strong showing, right? They say we have 4 patents for RA, 4 for this, 3 for that, and so on. But to really do our homework, we should look at the patents. So they tell us they have a stack. I went out and tried to find them. Again, they didn't give us the numbers, but you can do a little searching and you can find interesting patents when you know what to search for. So I found a stack of patents that are the dosing patents. Let me show you 2. One of the patents relevant to RA is the one we looked at. It's the 135 patent issued in 2014. It was filed June 5th, 2002. That means it expires in 2022. Here's the claim. We looked at that before. This is the claim for a method of treating RA in a human subject, comprising administering subcutaneously, as opposed to intravenously, total body dose of 40 milligrams of our antibody, right? So on the left here, we have the claim and the patent number for one of the patents in RA. The puzzle I want to consider is whether having another patent on the same thing really makes anything better. Does it last longer? Is it stronger? So here's another one I found. This is US patent 9073987. It issued in July 2015, so issued a lot later. Does it last longer though? Well, here's the detail about when it was applied for. And when you pull that piece of the patent, it says it's a continuation, right? Remember the family trees, right? It is based on an earlier application that was filed on, guess when? June 5th, 2002, and is now the patent on the left. So here's a second patent, but it's a family member, right? It derived from the same application that the first guy did. So they're going to expire at the same time, same day, same year. They're related. They're part of a family. So second patent doesn't give us more years. Does it give us more protection? Here's the first claim. What is claimed is a method of reducing signs and symptoms in a patient with moderately to severely active RA. Note the difference. This one said a method for treating RA in a human. This one's a method of reducing the signs and symptoms. Sounds a lot like treating, doesn't it? In a patient, I assume its economic value is in humans, and instead of having RA, they have moderately to severely active RA. Doesn't look so different, does it? Keep going. In the original patent, we say we administer subcutaneously to a human subject having RA a total body dose of 40 milligrams once every 13 to 15 days for a period sufficient to treat them. In the new patent, we say we administer to a patient a total body dose of 40 milligrams of our antibody, wherein the dose is administered, guess how? Subcutaneously. 40 milligrams every 13 to 15 days. The original then goes on just to characterize the antibody in language we've seen before, wherein the antibody comprises and they explain in fancy terms what it is. In the new one, the same exact terms. So what do we learn by pulling these patents? And if you pull the rest, you'll see a very similar pattern. What you learn is, although they say they've got a lot of patents, in this case, the portfolio isn't really adding much depth. The patents expire at roughly the same time. We learn that because they're filed as part of the same family. The claims, they use different words, and of course the patent office let them get the new patent, because if I think this is innovative, this is the same thing. I'm happy to give you that too. Right? You want to say it slightly differently? Fine, who cares? It's basically the same. And so that if this was okay from a patent perspective, this is okay too, as long as they expire at the same time, which they do. And so the slide which shows all these patents, I think, confuses people a little bit. They've got a bunch of dosing patents, but at the end of the day, they're going to rise or fall together, at least by indication, right? So if it's obvious to use this for RA, And if it was easy to then, not easy, I shouldn't even say easy, if it was obvious to try different dosing patterns, that might have been expensive, might have been hard, might have been time consuming, but if it was obvious, the RA patents will presumably fall as a group. Then we might slide over to something else, Crohn's disease. And we might say, look, that might be obvious too, to use this drug for Crohn's and to fine-tune the dosing, but the groups of patents will rise and fall together. That takes us back to this slide. So I don't want to say anything bad about Humira. I don't know how this is going to play out. But what I do want to point out to you is as you look at a portfolio like this, here we have the strongest of the patents, right? This is for the drug. The company then smartly, as they saw this clock running out, figured out what else can we do? And they said we can do a lot of things, all these things, right? We can get dosing patents about how you use the drug. We can get patents on improved formulations. The liquid was our example. Manufacturing strategies, related products and services and the like. But what I wanted to point out to you is we got to pay attention to what really is here. Counting the patents doesn't tell us anything at all. You have 6, fantastic. Got to look at them. In this case, when you look at them, I think what you see is that most of the patents expire together, and most of them are overlapping in a way that they'll rise and fall together. Now, it might be that they will rise, that they'll be fine, and these patents will last, and this monopoly on this drug will rightly continue for quite some time. But I want to point out the importance of going and looking at the paperwork to understand, are you getting meaningful additional protection in terms of duration or in terms of scope? Then these other patents, like I say, don't want to ignore them. They might turn out to be great. What's interesting here is not even the company knows. They know for sure that the dosing patents would be really helpful and important because they got to be the label on the biosimilar, right? If I make a biosimilar, I need to dose it. On these, they just don't know. Maybe the biosimilar will use their formulation. Maybe it's the best one. Maybe it's the only one. Maybe they will use AbbVie's manufacturing. Maybe they're the best techniques. Maybe they're the only techniques, and so on. But even the company doesn't know about this stuff. And so that's why the focus is on the dosing patents. One more comment from me. As you look at piles of patents, in addition to looking at when they expire, and in addition to looking at whether the scope is different, there are other things to look at. For instance, I always look to see if the later patents tried to get something different, even if they failed. Did they try to get broader scope? Was there an argument? Maybe that'll give us a hint of something more that's coming down the pike. Similarly, I look to see if maybe the later patents, what they were really trying to do was disclose more information to the patent office. Maybe the idea was, I'm going to get a lookalike patent, but this time I'm going to really give the patent examiner a ton of prior art. That way, if he issues the patent still, it makes it even more credible. He was so well informed, and yet still, he gave me the patent. There are things like this that are worth looking at to see if there are differences that aren't surface differences in the dates and the claim language. We didn't do that here. Just wanted to flag that for you as you think about patent portfolios. All right, that's the end of this module on Humira. Again, what I think is interesting and helpful to you, I hope, is seeing some of the documents and also seeing how to think through a portfolio, both how to talk about it if it's yours and how to question it as a listener.